Welcome, welcome. I'm writing hello. I have some people watching with me live. Let me check my sound before I get good and started because sometimes it doesn't work out. Let me see where this is. Check my sound. So if you are watching live, go ahead in the chat. Tell us where you're watching from, what you teach, or who you support. We already have Miss Fiona Foley in the chat, and she supports K through 6 teachers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So tonight we are talking about using data. Oh, and she's from Sydney, Australia. Oh, we have Jamie, teaches 3rd grade. Welcome to the chat. Very good. I bought a new teleprompter to help with my whole setup, and I think it helps with my eye contact. So I'm fidgeting with that if you see me fidgeting around. But tonight, it has been a long time. I've been trying to get set up, and I've been making some changes in my intervention academy, trying to do that. So refocusing some things because it's been about 4 years since I started the academy, and I'm changing some things around as technology moves very quickly. So tonight's topic is we're talking about you have data, so now what do you do? So in my intervention academy, the Math Intervention Academy, I created a 4-step process for math intervention. It's the assess, diagnose, reteach, and reassess. And the portion that I'm going to share with you all tonight is that reassess part, which is an integral part of what we do in education. It is the testing part. It is all the things that we need to know if our strategy is actually working. And a lot of times, that's the piece that's missing. And when I say that's the piece that's missing, that's the piece that we skip over once we have tried a new skill or intervention. And that's my focus tonight, is to focus on what do I do with this data now that I have it? What do I do? And so, with that being said, the math intervention cycle begins with assessing your students. That's what it begins with. It begins with, and then you diagnose. Well, from that assessment, what do I need to do? And then you reteach it, and then you reassess the skill. And I'm not talking about a 10-question, I'm just talking about maybe 3 to 5 questions that you use. So let me go ahead and go to this screen. This is the actual sheet that I use to progress monitor my students. Now, in this on this progress monitoring form, I use this to track their data. So just recently, last week, I tested some of my students, and after implementing a strategy. So the problem that I was having was that I didn't know what the issue was with the students. I didn't know if they were struggling with comprehension or was it the item. Now we're in, and you all should probably be dead into this test prep season if you're in a subject area that does test prep. That's where you should be, and you're refining things and you're still teaching curriculum. I guarantee that. But the problem that I am having is that I don't know where the issue lies. I just don't. So I gave them a 5-question quiz. We took an interim assessment. And then after that, I got the data. I created some intervention groups. Now, the intervention group was not based on any one standard. It was based on the children who I expected to do better than what they actually did. And that was my group. That was the group. And so what I started doing is I kind of treat them like my focus group. My focus group is I start with them and I implement a strategy to see if it works with them. So if it works with that group, they have all different levels in it. It's not a homogeneous group. It is heterogeneous. It has your high, medium, and low students in there. So it's a good group to have like focus and to try different strategies with them. So I've been trying out, reciprocal teaching, which is a reading strategy that I am using. I'm actually going to add that to my problem solving product that I sell. Each year when I add something, when I find out something that really works, I'll add it to my problem solving program. So here I start with my, I'll put student 1 here. And the baseline is, well, where did they start from? So that's the baseline. It's where they started. Then the second part is progress monitoring 1, 2, and 3. So say for instance, and it could be, it's no one right or wrong way to progress monitor. It's data that you are using to inform or tell you if that strategy is working. That is, let me go back to myself. That is the reason why we progress monitor. Progress monitoring is not a dirty word. It's a word that means, hey, is this working? And you cannot say a strategy is working if you don't progress monitor. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. So that's why you have to have a template like this to show where the child started at. And this can be taken to data conversations. And so here's my student, and say for instance, this was your universal screen. So that's something that the school does. So they screen everybody to see where the child was at. So that's that data. And then you may have started your small group data, and then we took the star interim, and there's your 3 pieces of data. Now, from these 3 pieces of data, you need to do something with the data. In order for it to be a formative assessment, you have to do something with the data. There's no, I mean, you can't say, oh, well, I have the data, but what am I'm not going to do anything with it. So for me, when I look at my students' data, I look for three things, especially when we're talking about test prep. It's only three. That's it. It's only three things. So the first thing is I look for, is it a math issue? That's the first thing. Is it a math issue? If it's a math issue, then I can correct that with content. Then the second thing is I look at, is it a reading comprehension issue? And I can tell with problem solving. If the child is struggling with problem solving, but if I read, and I know this because I tested, if I read it to the student and they get it, then I know it's a reading comprehension issue. That's the second thing. And the third thing is the test item. There may be issues with the test item that the student does not understand and cannot apply what they know to the test item. And you're probably saying, well, what does that look like? It looks like this. My students were having problems with tables. How did I know? Because it came out in our interim assessment. You have to go back and look at the low standards. I don't care what state you're in. You have to go back and look at the low standards and look at the test items. You have to know what your students can or cannot do. That's why student profiles are important. And I'm not talking about a long drawn out thing. So like, I know my students can do certain things. I know that right off the cuff. But when I have a student that's higher level and then they take a test and they score here, it raises a red flag, which I have to go look at the student work. You cannot make instructional decisions without looking at the student work. You just can't. There's no way. So when you're looking at your progress monitoring sheet, say for instance, at the universal screening, they met benchmark. That's the first one. I didn't put a score there. And then your small group, they made a 60%. And then on the interim, they were below. This is cause for concern. And I know that if you have a large class, it's hard to look at everybody, but you have to, like, when there are real issues, you have to look at the student work. But if you can't look at, you don't have a time or you have a large group, you can have conversations with the children in groups in your classroom. That's another thing that I'll do to get data. That is still data. It's qualitative data. So you can do that in your room. Just pull certain kids and then have conversation. Then you could pose certain questions to see how students answer. Because questioning, that strategy is supposed to inform instruction and help you to adjust. Like, for example, there are a lot of models that are in the K through 5 strand. And what I've noticed about certain students is that they don't connect with the model. For example, if I ask them a question about the problem, they'll use the algorithm to reason. They're not using the model. And that's one of the things you have to look out for with children is that, are they using the model in their explanation? And it's not that the kids don't understand the model. They have been programmed so much to use the algorithm and the calculations to support their reasoning. And I'm not saying that there's not a time for that, but there is a time for that. And if there's a model in a test item and your kids are not doing well with it, ask them conversations. Ask them questions. Ask them questions about what they're going to, how would they explain how to solve this problem. I use the Hess Cognitive Rigor Matrix because it gives me really good ideas on how to increase the thinking of the students to hit the level of rigor so I can see where the issue lies. So one of the things that they said, asking the children to give what's not an example. So if you're doing equivalent fractions and you're working on that and the children are doing well, ask them to give you an example of an equivalent fraction and an example of a fraction that's not equivalent and explain the difference. So if they cannot fluently explain that, that's the issue. That goes with place value. That goes with all of those higher level skills that kids struggle with. Well, and decomposing whole numbers, those are also things that you have to address and can be addressed in conversations. I know in elementary, there's this thing, oh, I'm going to have one-on-one conversations. In the day and age of shrinking budgets, that's not reality. Pull those kids in as a group and y'all have conversations about what you're seeing in the student work. Put it on a slide and have a conversation with the class and have them write down their responses. You could use the Kagan strategy, rally coach, and you'll see if what kids know how to solve the problem. Because the highest form of learning, and if you've learned something, you should be able to teach it to someone else. That is the highest form. So back to my progress monitoring sheet. The progress monitoring sheet is a tool for you to look at your students. And you don't have to put all the students on here. You could put your tier 2, tier 3 kids on here so that you can monitor them and bring this as a conversation starter with whomever, because your numbers are telling you something. It's telling you to address the need. So for me, when I see a student that has started to decline, and make no mistake, this does happen. You have a student that started strong and then they go into the pits of despair by the time December gets here and you don't know what's going on. So what I have done is I've done more than one thing. I moved the student seat. I've started to be strategic when I'm asking questions. I make sure those students who I know may be inattentive, may be off task, I know I start calling on them strategically. And they don't know why, but I need them. It's a way to get their attention, and it's a way to see if they're understanding and following along with me. And if I notice that they're not, when I have my small group time, then I know that those are things that I need to address in small group. And that's basically from data. There's two types of data. If you haven't read my blog post on qualitative versus quantitative data, you can read that on my blog post. I'm not going to really go into that tonight. But there's two types of data. You have to have the qualitative and the quantitative data. The quantitative data are your numbers. Your qualitative data is what you hear, what you see in your classroom. And if it's not matching, or if it solidifies what you already know, you need to address it. And how do you address that? Is through your intervention. And that's what happens next when you have data. So now what? The next step is just like the intervention cycle. After you get that data, you need to diagnose, find out what the problem is, and then reteach it and reassess it. And then it starts over again. Either you are going to have cleared it up, or you're going to have to revisit, because what focusing on those weak point does, either it's going to fix or uncover some more issues. And I learned that when I was teaching 8th grade math. It's going to either fix it or uncover it. When I was an interventionist at the high school, I was working with Algebra 1. And it was just like the gift that kept on giving. You know, I fix one problem and then uncover another one. Fix this problem, uncover another. So it's just like peeling back a lot of the issues and layers of deficits that the children have. And the older they are, the more deficits they have. And that's just where we are. So make no mistake, intervention is ongoing, just like this cycle. It constantly is a circular process. It's a circular process. So this, under the assess, you have your benchmark, teacher-made tests. Those are all data, progress monitoring, analyze student work, choose an evidence-based math strategy. Your small group instruction, it could be whole group. Intervention doesn't always have to be small group. I know people say that. If you have a group of students that are 80% of the class doesn't understand it, please don't try to do that in small group. Go ahead and do it in whole group again. Fix what needs to be fixed. Release the kids. And if there are kids that still don't understand it, go ahead and put them in a small group. But don't try to get 80% of your kids into small group. I know some people are in those situations, but it doesn't make sense. Know that. So hopefully this has given you some joy. That's my little happy emoji. And giving you something that you can take outside, take today and implement in your classroom, something that can help you win. Get you some small wins, because I know this testing season after COVID, we have all these different initiatives, and we're constantly closing gaps that were there pre-COVID, and the gaps have gotten larger. But it's a constant cycle, and just continue to close gaps and do what needs to be done. So hope you had an amazing time. But before we go, I do have my no prep test prep. And this is something that I'm using this year. And I'm going to drop the link into the chat. It has different parts to it. Let me move this over. So it's digging into data. Let me see. Digging into data. Then we have your intervention groups. This is, you can plan your groups that you're going to have, especially if you haven't gotten into your test prep. Planning out your groups is definitely something that's going to help you. Also, I put in a test prep calendar where you can, after you've progress monitored your children, you can write I'd say above and below Some people say 60%. I just say 50 because you always are going to do a spiral review to get it up. So you don't want to keep focusing on standards that are not, what's the word I'm looking for? That are 50% or higher. So that's one of the things that you don't want to look at. Also, these are your calendars. What else do I have in here? I have your spiral review template where you can, as you're going through the review, you can look at what your students are doing as far as the standards, how many, who mastered, what percentage, the date it was done, percent passing in the total. So that's one template. Then you have your reteach template that you can use there. And what else? Disaggregating data. This has become increasingly important with teachers because they always want to talk about your subpops. These are your subpops. These are your subpopulations. So you have your African American, your Latino, Caucasian, emerging bilinguals. Those are people or a demographic that you want to keep your eye on. Then here's the daily mastery check. You have your name, and then you have your notes. And then that's the sheet that I was using tonight, the progress monitoring sheet for you all. So hopefully this is something that you can take and use. If not, hopefully you learned something tonight. Thank you for being a part. Thank you for being a part of my community. And I'll see you all in my next live stream. Bye-bye.